Barber say that this is not going to reduce the deficit, and you're the only person I know with a Nobel Prize in economics. And I want to put up something that the former director of the Congressional Budget Office wrote in your newspaper, Doug Holtz-Eakin. In reality, if you strip out all the gimmicks and budgetary games and rework the calculus, a wholly different picture emerges. The health care reform legislation would raise, not lower, federal deficits by $562 billion.
That was a shameful column on the part of Doug Holtz-Eakin. You can just go through it and you see that he made assertions that are just not true. Just because he's not commenting on the reality, he's commenting on what the Congressional Budget Office estimate was based on. And if you look at the things he says, it's 10 years of taxes for 6 years of benefits. That's just not true. Most of the taxes don't start up until the time the benefits do and so on. So that's just wrong. I mean, and the odds are this is going to actually be better than the CBO numbers say because there are things that are uncertain. And the CBO scores them as 0 because we don't know if they'll work, but some of them will work. Above all, it's amazing, actually, if you think about people on the right, they're simultaneously screaming they're going to send all the old people to death panels, and it's not going to save any money. That's a contradictory point of view.
Death panels would save money.
What?
I mean,
theoretically. The advisory panel, which has the ability to make more or less binding judgments on saying this particular expensive treatment actually doesn't do any good medically, and so we're not going to pay for it, that is actually going to save quite a lot of money. We don't know how much yet. The CBO gives it very little credit, but most of the healthcare economists I talk to think that it's going to be a really major cost saving. And I have to say, if people haven't seen, I'm wearing an FDR tie in honor of the fact that we have gone from the New Deal to the big Biden deal. I guess we're allowed to say
big bleeping deal.
Yes.
Peggy?
Two things. One is, I think, execution, the ability of a government already too busy, involved, overburdened, to successfully execute this huge 2,300-page thing that nobody seems still to know fully what is in it. It is interesting to me that the American people now are getting it off the Internet. I'm getting lots of emails saying, what the heck is this and what the heck is that? We have been talking about this bill for a year, but right now we're in the stage where everybody starts to read it and question it, which I cannot think is good for the passers.
I mean, a lot of people I talk to are saying...
Try to read it on your computer. That's
a lot of people have been saying Romney Care has just passed. This is essentially identical to the Massachusetts health reform. There are really no significant differences. We know it can be worked. Massachusetts, there are problems with it, but it's not an unworkable system. This is what legislation looks like. Somebody should look. I do international trade stuff. Somebody should look at a trade agreement, which typically runs to 23,000 pages. Right? This is nothing much. George.
Well, first of all, Paul's prize is in economics, not practical Washington wisdom. No one that I know, Paul, thinks the Cadillac tax that's been kicked down the road on the expensive health care plans till 2018 will ever be enacted. No one thinks the Medicare cuts are ever going to be enacted. One of the ways this simple, workable legislation is going to be made to work is the IRS is going to hire about 16,000 new agents to chase the American people around to make sure they pay their mandatory fees. Approximately one half of the 35 million or so people who are previously uninsured, who will now be insured, are going to go on the Medicaid rolls of our overburdened state governments. All of that cost will be pushed down into property taxes. This is going to have unintended consequences that will boggle your mind.
Well, again, I think we're going to spend the next 6 months once again trying to debunk all of these myths and these lies and this misinformation that's been, pillared around on the Internet over the last couple of years. But the truth is that this is a strong bill that will provide relief not just to those individuals without insurance, but those individuals with insurance who are now seeing their premiums rise by 25, 39%. They're also concerned that they're one flu away or one sickness away from losing their health insurance. And yes, for small businesses, this will give many individuals an opportunity to finally be able to afford health care. There are so many good benefits. If we start cherry-picking apart all of the bad things and then exploit some of the anger and frustration out there, then we'll continue to have another 6 months of conversation to put out all of the lies and all of the rumors.
But let's dig a little deeper into what George said, because it's not a completely insane point. George's point is that part of this health care bill You like that I said it's not a completely insane question?
George Will, not completely insane.
Not completely.
It's better than not completely insane. It's an astute point. If you look at Washington politics, these tough decisions often do get kicked down the road until they're kicked away completely. If you look at the Medicare doc fix, how much doctors are supposed to be reimbursed, that was done as cost saving, and then they keep undoing it. And the question is, if these Medicare cuts to Medicare Advantage, and if this tax on these high so-called Cadillac tax, if these will actually be enacted or not. And Paul and Donna, do you think that they'll actually happen?
Let me say, the actual history, most Medicare cost-saving measures have, in fact, gone through as planned. So people cherry-pick a few that have not and say, oh, you can't actually do anything. But the history is, in fact, that most of them have, in fact, been implemented and not reversed. So the history is actually on our side here. And look, the fact is that these things, like the Cadillac tax, they are going to be coming up at a time when we'll be very much in now we need to get the budget under control mode. The fact of the matter is the timing is such that just about the time that we're saying, okay, we ran up big debts to deal with the Great Recession, now we have to do something about getting the fiscal balance under control, that's exactly when the Cadillac tax is going to come along. And if people are going to say, oh, we're not going to do that, then they'll be forced to come up with something else. So I actually think this is all going to happen. I think it's, if anything, there are going to be more cost-saving measures down the road because, look, we do know that by 2018, 2020, fiscal issues are going to be at the forefront. So I don't think this is at all implausible. The logic of the situation says that the petty politics is actually going to be pushed into the background.
George and Peggy, let me ask you a question. And one of all of your fellow pundits, David Frum, was summarily dismissed from his position at the American Enterprise Institute. Why he was, we're not going to get into, but it occurred after he wrote a column that I want to ask you about. He said that the passage of this bill was actually a Waterloo for Republicans, and he wrote, quote, "No illusions, please. This bill will not be repealed, even if Republicans scored a 1994-style landslide in November. How many votes could we muster to reopen the donut hole and charge seniors more for prescription drugs? How many votes to reallow insurers to rescind policies when they discover a pre-existing condition? How many votes to banish 25-year-olds from their parents' insurance coverage? We followed the most radical voices in the party and the movement, and they led us to abject and irreversible defeat." Peggy, did Republicans squander an opportunity here? Whether or not you look at the short-term political gains that could happen, this bill is likely not going anywhere should Republicans have gotten up to the table and actually tried to contribute ideas.
A lot of Republicans feel they did go to the table and were not so terribly welcome there. You all know the stories. Olympia Snowe tried it. Paul Ryan tried it. Tom Coburn. Bob Bennett. There are a million names of people. Bennett had a Bennett-Wyden bill that was so good, had the support of Republicans and Democrats, covered so many people. The administration and the Democratic-controlled Congress just stiffed it. Republicans were there until they came to realize that they could not get anything that they felt was reasonable, that the bill was being tugged, I'm sorry,
I wish I lived
too
on Peggy's
far
planet
in
here.
directions that they didn't want to go. They didn't want public option, etc. Wyden-Bennett was good.
The Wyden-Bennett bill, if the president had come out right after his inauguration and said, I want to do two things. I want to change the tone in Washington and I want to insure the uninsured. By last August, he could have had that passed, and the Wyden-Bennett bill was 70 votes. It's 1/19 the length of the bill that was passed. It's less intrusive and less coercive, which are virtues to some of us and vices to the Obama administration.
Wyden-Bennett, and we're going to lose the audience here totally, but Wyden-Bennett was a much more far-reaching transformation of the whole way healthcare works, which means that whatever people said about supporting it as it came closer to the floor, it would have had mass defections. The Obamacare is conservative, not in a political sense, but in a sort of ordinary life sense. It leaves the system that most Americans have pretty much intact, and that was what made it possible. You can say in the abstract, people were in favor of the ideas behind a radical transformation of the whole system. It wasn't going to happen. This was going to happen, and it did.
Well, I agree with Paul to this extent that the Obama bill is fundamentally timid in that it did not attack what everyone knows is the source of our main problem, which is employer-provided health insurance, which tangles up a high inflationary product, health insurance, health care, with the wage system of this country.
I guess I'm not everyone, because I don't agree. I mean, the fundamental problem we have is third third-party payment, which is necessary. You can't run healthcare unless somebody else pays the bills in extreme cases, which is where most of the money is. But we don't have a system that is very good at providing incentives to limit costs, and this bill takes some important steps in that direction.
I want to move on to another topic.
Can I give a
Donna, yes, go ahead.
The David Frum, because David is a good person. It once again shows that the Republican Party has a small tent, that they're not diverse and they're not welcoming. And I think it's bad for the party. It's good for Democrats, though.